So we'll be starting with creating our first HTML page. So for us to create our first HTML page, I'll simply come to my desktop or anywhere in your system, then create a folder for the project. So I'll create a folder and call it HTML. So as I've created a folder and called it HTML, I'll go to my Visual Studio Code, then click on File, click on Open Folder. Then you go to wherever your project folder is. Mine is in the desktop. Then the name is HTML. I'll click on it. Then select folder to open the folder in my Visual Studio Code. As you can see, it has been opened in my Visual Studio Code. So for us to create our first page, I'll simply close this. Then over here at the left, you can see this first one that says new file. I'll click on it, then write index. Let me use small letter index dot. Remember the extension I'm using because it's the HTML file. I'll be writing HTML, then click enter. So there's this common convention in the coding world, in the sense that if you're just starting out to code, you'll be first writing something called hello world. So in order to create a HTML element or anything, we normally start with this angle brackets. Then I'm just trying to create a simple h1 element, which is h1. Don't worry if you don't understand, I'll see explain all this in detail. Then a closing angle bracket. You can see that Visual Studio automatically completes it for me. That's one of the benefits of using Visual Studio Code. So I'll simply write hello world. So as I've written it, I'll go over to the project folder, which is this HTML. As you can see, this is the index file that I just created. So if I click on it, you can see the hello world I wrote in the text editor is showing here. So we have successfully created our first HTML page. So we'll be discussing about the basic structure of HTML documents. So like I told you before, if you're using Visual Studio Code, coding is made easier for you. You don't need to start writing everything manually. So I'll show you how we programmers actually code with Visual Studio Code. So if I want to write the basic structure of HTML document, all I just need to do is to press my shift key, then press the exclamation on my keyboard, then hit enter. A boilerplate will be generated for you by Visual Studio Code, and this is the basic structure of HTML documents. So I'll go over each of them and explain to you what it means. You can see this first one, which is the first declaration here, doc type HTML. So this doc type HTML is used to tell the browser to treat this document as HTML5, which is the latest HTML that we use. You know, before there have been other versions of HTML, so it is in the doc type that the browser actually knows the version that you are running. So this doc type HTML actually tells the browser which version you are running, which is HTML5. Then you can see that we'll have this HTML, which if I close, you can see this is the beginning and this is the closing. So in HTML there is something called opening and closing tag. You understand? So this is HTML. You can see it started with the left angle bracket, then there is HTML, then there is something called an attribute, which I'll still go in detail and explain to you. They say lang ing, which is en. What it simply tells is to treat this page primary language as English. So there are different languages you can actually choose. So then we have the head. Every HTML element you doc page you are creating will actually have all this. It will have a doc type declaration, then it will have this HTML. Then inside the HTML, you can see that they have the head and the body. So this is generally the basic structure of HTML document. So we'll be starting off with the HTML tag. HTML tag is just a piece of code in HTML used to define the structure of a web page. So a tag generally starts with a left angle bracket, then the tag name, then a right angle bracket. You can see that Visual Studio automatically completed it for me. So I'll just give a space and explain to you what happened here. So this beginning, you can see this point is called the opening tag. Then you can see there's a space in between where you can put your content. Then this one that has a backslash is called the closing tag. So this is where you can put your content, like a paragraph, something like that. Then we also have different tags. We have the h1 tag, then we have the h2 tag as well. So these are all called HTML tags. Then there's also some tags in HTML that doesn't have a closing tag. Like for example, the input, you can see it only has the opening tag. Then we also have the img, like an image, and some few other ones that doesn't have a closing tag. So this is what we call tag in HTML. Next, we have HTML elements. HTML elements consists of opening tag, content, and closing tag. So to create a HTML element, let's assume I want to create a h1. Then I can call this heading 1. Can call this heading 1. Then I can create another HTML element, maybe a p tag. Then I can put random content inside it with lorem ipsum. Elements are the basic building block of HTML documents. HTML attributes. HTML attributes provide additional information about HTML elements. They are usually specified in the opening tag. Like for example, the ID. I can write ID, then give it any ID. Let's say ID. Then a class as well is considered as an attribute, because we normally use this ID to know the ID of any element in our page, and IDs are mostly unique. Then this class attribute is normally used for CSS styling. So all these are called HTML attributes. So we'll be talking about comments. Comment is very popular across many programming languages, although that HTML is just a markup language. So comments are used to explain the code. Like it's normally a good convention when you are writing code and you want to explain it, because sometimes most of the code you wrote will be read or maintained by another developer or even yourself. So most times if you are creating a code or you are coding, it's a normal recommended convention to write comment, use and explain the code. Let's say for example I want to write a code, I want to create a paragraph. I create a paragraph, put like a random content inside it first. Then to create a comment, I might come somewhere here, most times on top of the, before the code you want to write. So for you to create a comment in HTML, you normally start with a left angle bracket, then you put exclamation mark, then you put dash dash. You can see that Visual Studio automatically completed it for me. So any code that I write here, anything I write here is not going to be rendered as HTML element or anything. The browser will totally ignore this when checking for the elements. So this is just used for description or to add meaning to the code you are writing. That's the use of a comment. So let's talk about the popular HTML elements we normally use in our day-to-day coding when writing HTML. So we have heading 1, and it goes down from heading 1 to heading 6. So I'll just simply write all of them. So these are the heading we have in HTML from heading 1 to heading 2. So this heading 1 you see here is normally the main title of the page, and we shouldn't have two H1 in a single page. So this heading 1 is used for the main title of the page. Then we have the heading 2, which we use for a section title. Website is created in different section. So any section you have, if you want to create a title for it, you use heading 2. Then we have the heading 3, which is used for subsection. Then we rarely use heading 4, heading 5, heading 6, because most times we don't get that deep. Maybe we can use heading 4, but most times what we use is from heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. So let me run this in a browser and show you how it looks. So you can see I've run it on a browser. We are seeing heading 1. You can see that heading 1 is actually looks very bigger and more bold. Then we have the heading 2, we have the heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, and heading 6. So this is how to create heading in HTML. So if you want to create a paragraph in HTML, you use the p tag. This stands for paragraph, and paragraph is normally used to write readable block of code or text. So I can just create a random content. You can see this is a block of code. Then if I go to the browser, you can see the paragraph I just created on the screen. So if you want to create a paragraph, you use the p tag. So let's talk about horizontal line. So if you want to give horizontal line in HTML, you can just simply write HR. Let me just put this content here to demarcate these two contents. Then go to the browser. You can see the horizontal line I just created over here. So this is how to create a horizontal line in HTML. If you want to add line break, which is like adding an extra line in your code, you use this tag called on BR. So if I put BR here, then go to the website, refresh, you can see that here actually moved down a bit. So if I want to add more lines down, I can add more BR. So let me add 2 more BR, then go to the browser and refresh. You can see BR is used to add an extra line in your web page.